Most of us know the quiet effort it takes to avoid a person we don't want to see. When we carry the weight of a past we'd rather forget, isolation feels like a sanctuary. You learn how to time your movements to stay out of sight. In the first century, the village women typically gathered at the local well in the cool hours of the early morning to socialize. But for one woman in Samaria, the social hub was a place of judgment. To avoid the whispers, she makes the exhausting walk to fetch water at high noon, in the blistering heat of the day. Her isolation is the result of a fractured history. She has been through 5 marriages, and she is currently living with a man who is not her husband. In a tightly knit society defined by its religious purity, she has no place in the morning crowd. When she arrives at the well expecting solitude, the site is already occupied. Sitting in the midday heat is a Jewish rabbi. This encounter at Jacob's Well is a deliberate collision of cultures and histories. It is a moment designed to upend the social hierarchy of the ancient world. To understand the tension, we have to look at a divide nearly 1,000 years in the making. It began with the Assyrian conquest in 722 BCE, when the northern kingdom was dismantled and repopulated with foreign settlers. To the Jews in the south, these Samaritans were no longer purely Israelite. This ethnic rift created a religious schism. While Jews centralized their worship in Jerusalem, the Samaritans claimed their own center on Mount Samaritan Temple. By the time Jesus arrives, the two groups are locked in a mutual, generations-old hatred. The hostility was so deep that a typical Jew would walk miles out of their way, crossing the Jordan River twice, just to bypass Samaritan territory entirely. Then there were the social barriers. In this era, a Jewish man, especially a rabbi, was strictly forbidden from speaking with a woman in public. For a Jew to associate with a Samaritan woman was a betrayal of his national identity. Jesus ignores every detour. He walks directly into hostile territory and sits at a Samaritan well, choosing to break every religious and social rule of his day for the sake of one outcast. The woman is shocked when Jesus breaks protocol and asks for a drink. He is a Jewish man asking to use her ritually unclean bucket. Jesus uses the moment to pivot the conversation. He tells her that if she knew who was asking, she would be the one asking for living water. In the Middle East, living water was a moving spring, unlike stagnant rainwater in a cistern. Jesus uses this as a metaphor for the Holy Spirit, an internal source of spiritual life that never runs dry, providing satisfaction independent of external circumstances. The woman misses the spiritual meaning at first. She wants this water so she can stop making the exhausting daily walk to the well, where she feels so unwelcome. Jesus shifts the focus to her actual need. He tells her to go and call her husband. When she admits she has no husband, Jesus speaks the truth of her life out loud, the 5 husbands and the man she is with now. He proves she is completely known to him. He doesn't expose her past to shame her, but to show that despite her history, she is still the person he came to find. Recognizing him as a prophet, she immediately brings up the central debate of her people, whether to worship here on Mount Gerizim or in Jerusalem. Jesus replies that true worship is no longer about a mountain or a specific city. He explains that God is spirit, and those who seek him must worship in spirit and truth. When she mentions her hope for the coming Messiah, Jesus gives a direct answer. I, the one speaking to you, I am he. He reveals his identity not to the leaders in Jerusalem, but to a nameless woman by a well. The disciples return from the town and were scandalized to see their rabbi speaking with a Samaritan woman. They are confused, but no one asks why he is breaking the rules. The woman does something unexpected. She leaves her heavy water jar behind at the well and runs back toward the village. She heads straight for the very people she had spent years trying to avoid. She tells the whole town, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did." Her words are enough to convince the villagers. They stream out of the town and head toward the well to see Jesus for themselves. By the time the sun begins to set, the woman who arrived in secret is leading her entire community to the person she found there. The town's outcast has become their first witness. We carry our own version of her bucket every day, dragging it to sources we hope will finally hold. We look for satisfaction in the approval of others, in our status, or in the next achievement. We tell ourselves that once we reach a certain goal, our thirst will finally disappear. But those sources work exactly like a physical well. The relief is temporary, the satisfaction fades, and we eventually find ourselves walking back to the very same spot, looking for more. Jesus crossed every cultural and historical barrier of his day just to sit with one person who felt she didn't belong. He went out of his way to offer her a grace she didn't think she was allowed to have. You don't have to keep drinking from wells that leave you empty. Accept the invitation that Jesus offered at Sychar. Surrender your life to him and receive the free, eternally satisfying gift of his living water.